My little brother too. Anything you need, let me know.
Good looking, baby, because I need your help, baby. I need you to help me sell these 14 keys so I can get this ransom money for Sonny, man.
You got 14 bricks right there?
Yeah.
Put you up, eh?
Yeah, man, but look, B. Once we get my little brother back, man, we right the fuck back on, baby. We right the fuck back on once I get Sonny. It's gonna be business.
You do the honors, read Mr. Gittins' rights.
Fuck out of here.
Go ahead, Jeff. Read him his rights. I'm gonna play him the tape you made. He loves to hear his own voice.
You a cop?
Come on, Jeff. You did it. You brought us home.
You have the right to remain silent.
You a cop?
Anything you say can and will be held against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you. If at any time during questioning you choose
all I
not to
wanted
answer
to
the
do was be
questions
there
of
for
the
you, dog.
attorney, that is your choice.
All I did was be there for you. That's all I did. Huh, Jay Reed? You ain't no cop. You ain't no cop, Jay Reed.
All right, so today for this analysis, I will be stepping into uncharted territory, at least on my channel specifically, because most of the videos and the analyses that I do is geared towards women, or specifically women dealing with envy in their romantic relationships, their platonic relationships, and their familial relationships. However, when we talk about envy specifically, it's important to note that envy is not gender exclusive. And what I mean by that is, although women deal with envy and it's pretty prevalent, envy is just as significant amongst the male population as well. And to dissect as well as depict how envy presents itself amongst the male population within their relationships, I'm going to pull from 3 different movies, and all of the characters in these films will act as our muse for this analysis today. And the 3 movies include Paid in Full will be one of them, Juice will be another, and In Too Deep will be the last one. And I just feel like the characters that were depicted in these movies, the storyline, in my opinion, it perfectly portrayed how envy presents itself amongst the male population. I also believe that these films are super realistic, and they're also super thought-provoking. I feel like all of them had, everyone, including myself, on the edge of our seat. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and pull from these multiple muses, because there's a lot of characters at play here, and we're just going to hop right into this analysis. The interesting thing about men dealing with envy is a lot of the time the traits go under the radar, because envy presents itself in men in a more covert manner rather than an overt manner. Women typically identify envious women in their circle because the characteristics and the traits are overt. There's reputation ruining, there's gossiping, there's competing, there's imitation, there's backbiting, versus men, they typically don't engage in those characteristics because, for one, it's not a societal expectation, and 2, it's typically looked down upon. So a lot of the time, men find themselves dealing with the envious person when it's too late, because it's disguised as a quote-unquote brotherhood, a professional opportunity, or a friendship. And the reason why I believe that envy, or at least talking about envy amongst the male population, is important is because typically once an envious person has infiltrated a man's camp, it's a threat to their entire empire. Women typically hone in on a specific thing that they're envious of. Men, when they do damage out of envy, it's typically a collapse of the entire castle. And to further explain what I mean by the collapse of the entire castle and a threat to an entire empire, I'm going to read from 2 different sections in the book. And the first one is the hall monitor section. And this is typically how envious people will infiltrate amongst this population. And the hall monitor excerpt reads, as mentioned in earlier chapters, you have envious persons whose operation of attack is to monitor their target of envy. Their goal is to get close to their object of envy to monitor their progress and downfall. Often monitoring is done in cycles. Such cycles are very similar to the devalue and discard cycle in narcissistic abuse cycles. A hall monitor will only engage with objects of envy to assess for damage. So after reviewing the hall monitor envious archetype, I believe that this archetype is parallel to the movies Juice and In Too Deep specifically. And even as depicted in earlier parts of this analysis, where the character of Juice, the movie Juice, infiltrated into, a funeral of the very person that he put into harm's way to empathize and sympathize with the family. And the sole purpose of this was to assess damage and make sure that his name wasn't ringing and to present himself as if he wasn't a harm, even though he was the catalyst for the tragedy. Another instance of the hall monitor is In Too Deep. In my opinion, the hall monitor envious archetype was the foundation for the movie In Too Deep in the storyline. So for those who aren't familiar with the film, it was a depiction of this person who was pretty much a top dog in the streets and, in respects to street politics. And there was a detective who was assigned to monitor the suspect and attain all kinds of information and pretty much get this person in jail. And that's why it caught the individual off guard, the character, and he had to say, you're not a cop. There's no way you're a detective. You were my right-hand man in some of the most heinous crimes, and I got your hands dirty right along with me. There is no way that you are actually a detective. And the interesting thing about the In Too Deep movie is Mekhi Phifer actually pitched himself. That's the actor's name. But his character pitched himself to the prime suspect, the person who, was being orchestrated to take down and to put into jail. Now, I want to put a pin in the point of the character pitching himself to the very individual he was trying to imprison, who he was trying to collect information and data on to put into jail. Because even though envy presents itself for the most part differently amongst men and women, there is one thing that is typically prevalent across the board, no matter the gender, and it's that dire need for access. Envious people, no matter if it's an envious male or an envious female, they are always desperate for access. And I believe that this could be better assessed by revisiting the admiration stage of the 5 stages of envy in the book. And the admiration excerpt reads, adoration, inspiration, attraction. This is the stage where the envious person is seemingly enamored by you and what you have to offer. This can be your talents, your looks, your relationships. The envious person will admire these positive attributes initially. Now, initially, I was just going to read the admiration stage, but I feel compelled to read the coveting stage as well to provide more context. And this stage states, the next stage is coveting. This immediately follows the admiration stage because this is when the reality sinks in for the envious individual. This is when they realize that admiring your positive attributes is really them trying to live vicariously through them. When they face the harsh reality, they are not you, the bitterness sinks in. The feelings of adoration quickly shift to feelings of covetousness. Now, I believe this section of the book is parallel to, of course, the In Too Deep film, but also the Paid in Full film. And you have to be mindful of individuals in your circle who are reaping benefits off of being associated with you, but they are secretly coveting everything that they benefit from because of their association. So just because someone is constantly around you when you are calling shots and, you're at the top of your game, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're applauding you. Sometimes they're watching you with an envious eye and they're looking for the right time to jeopardize everything that you've built and substitute for you. And these red flags typically go under the radar because, as I mentioned earlier, men, when they're dealing with other men in friendships and professional relationships, a lot of the sabotage tactics are covert, so it's not as overt as women, where women typically can pick up on, okay, this person is clearly out to get me, through the attempts to reputation ruin, through the gossiping, through the overt competition and copying, imitation. Men, on the other hand, they don't typically display those same signs of cattiness. So it's important to note that when you deal with envy amongst the male population specifically, it oftentimes presents itself in envious archetypes listed in the book, such as the sabotage enabler and the malicious mentor. And I talk a lot about the malicious mentor on my channel, so I'm not sure if you all are familiar with that. If you already have the book, you're at an advantage because you can just go ahead and read that section while you're listening to this analysis. And even though the malicious mentor archetype is very fitting for this analysis, I want to dissect the sabotage enabler envious archetype because I feel like this is spot on to the dynamics that were depicted throughout all 3 of these films. And the sabotage enabler section reads, this is an envious individual who often holds rank, and this can make them very dangerous regarding your advancement and reputation. This is the person who withholds truths, is very vague, withholds constructive criticism, and engages in flattery to sabotage the target of envy. This is often an individual in a position of authority. For example, a boss, supervisor, parental figure, teacher, etc. They will encourage you to not take on more responsibilities, rarely provide you with constructive criticism or feedback, use vague communication when discussing mandatory topics, and use excessive flattery to disarm their prey. The purpose is to influence their targets to partake in self-sabotage with the assistance of deceptive efforts. And the reason why I believe the sabotage enabler, envious archetype, is more fitting to this specific topic is because with the malicious mentor, their characteristics are associated with constantly hovering over their target of envy and constantly monitoring their progress. And I believe that women, that's more accepted because women who are in a prominent position and they realize that there's a woman that they're envious of who may be in a subordinate position, they can get away with hovering over their progress or acting as like this helicopter figure under the guise of, I just want to make sure that they're doing everything right. I just want to protect them. I want to make sure that nothing bad happens to them. Versus men, on the other hand, it would kind of raise certain red flags and people will wonder, why are you trying to dictate or control another man's life? So typically, envy will present itself more so through the sabotage enabler archetype, where sabotage tactics are more covert, such as withholding valuable information, giving bad advice intentionally. Even, for example, say that you have a friend in your circle and you told them about an event that you wanted to attend because you feel like it will really help you professionally. And they have valuable information as far as what time the event starts, what time it's going to end, and where it's going to be. But they withhold that information from you because they don't want you to show up or rub shoulders with the right people so that you'll see some progress in your life. This is also prevalent romantically, where you may go to a friend and you may express interest in a particular person, and that friend talks you out of pursuing that person. They may lie and say that they heard certain things about the person that's not true. They may talk down about that person just to go behind your back and pursue them themselves. So even though the attacks aren't super overt, they are still dangerous because they're just as cunning and destructive. So with all that being said, when we dissect the topic of envy, specifically amongst the male population, it's important that you dot all of your I's and you cross all of your T's, because sabotage tactics are not rooted in cattiness. They're rooted in destroying your empire from the inside out. All right, that's all that I have for this analysis today on envy amongst men, or envy within the male population. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. But of course, I want to hear you all's perspectives, your comments, your opinions, and your personal experiences in the comment section below. Talk to you guys in the next one. Take care.